Right, so good morning. Let's get to the first slide first. So, blasting into the extreme, presented by Johan van Amersfoort and Spencer Pitts. As you can see, well, it says Spencer Pitts, but there's no Spencer Pitts yet. So he should be in here 15 minutes ago. So two things can happen. Either he will be in and he's going to show his live demos, or he's not going to be in and we might have coffee earlier. So we'll see. So I've got a hypothetical agenda. So I'm going to talk a little bit about blasting into the extreme. What is it? Why did we come up with this session? I'm going to talk about the extreme apps. I'm definitely going to talk about how to optimize the apps, and I just got notified of a really awesome, interesting constraint, because the projector is going to output 30 hertz, and I'm unsure what that would do to the remoting protocol. So we're going to, I did a lot of praying to the demo gods this morning. We'll see in real life what that resulted in. So remoting to physical is actually he is in! Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so he's going to talk about remoting to physical. He doesn't know about the connection constraints yet, so that's going to be a huge surprise. Dude. Yes, and unfortunately, Matt Coppinger is not going to be here, so we're not going to show the VR stuff, which honestly is boring, right? Right, so what's an extreme app? Or what are extreme apps? I think every app that does something that's irregular to your platform might be considered as an extreme app. So take any application that is either single-threaded, might consume more IOPS than expected, might require more RAM than expected, or in our case, might require GPU, which on average is most of the apps that you run on your system right now. So if you have like a consumer-grade NVIDIA GPU in your system, open a command prompt, launch NVIDIA-SMI and hit enter, it shows a list of processes that are linked to the GPU. And what you might be surprised of is that a couple of those processes are included in the Windows operating system. So things like Windows Search or Explorer.exe, the indexing service in Windows, are all tied to the GPU because it makes Windows run faster. And that's one of the misconceptions, that a GPU is purposely used within Windows for the graphical aspect, which it is not. So especially when talking about VDI and the way you can lower the impact of software on your hardware, it's also from a computational perspective. So within these categories of extremes apps, we have training and simulation, and I'm gonna show a real life demo of a simulation app. We got design and visualization, so CAD sort of apps, CATIA, those are those typical apps that require a GPU and can be considered as an extreme app. And CATIA, for instance, is such an app that requires a really fast CPU, and fast in terms of high clock speed. It's single-threaded. I think it's based on libraries that have been built in 2005-ish. Back then, we didn't know what hyperthreading was or what multi-core was. So it'll take everything it can from a single core and utilize that as much as possible. What that means is if you have a 2.4 gigahertz Xeon CPU in your system with 28 cores, you think it's fast, but as a result, the application will look shitty because it requires a clock speed of at least 3.4, 3.6 gigahertz. And that's the same with games, by the way. So I'm going to show a game. Games, on average, although they are multi-core, they will take everything they get from a single core to get the most out of it. And that's also one of the things that's really important when talking about design and visualization apps, and GPUs, the more CPU juice you have to get those pages into the GPU, to pass on calculations to the GPU, the better it is as well. Now, advertising and retail, that was something that Matt Coppinger would show, so unfortunately, we're not going to talk about that. Sports, and this is really cool. Does anyone recognize what's in the icon? So what is it? Yes. So who knows about what happened at Topgolf a couple of years ago? So who played at Topgolf before? Anyone played the Angry Birds game? Top Tracer? Did you know that it's fully accelerated using Horizon? So what you actually do is on Topgolf, kind of how do you call it? A driving range, which uses a lot of gamification. So you have all sorts of colored circles where you had to hit the ball in. What you can do is play a Angry Birds augmented game. So if you have a big screen in front of you, there's a camera and a sensor that recognizes where the ball is heading towards. And based on what you do, you see the ball actually inside the on the screen, and that's fully accelerated using Horizon. So they were on stage at Explore last year, in Vegas, talking about the use case. I've been involved with optimizing the user experience, and this shows that gaming on VDI actually is a thing. So if you ever go to Vegas or to another Topgolf location, I think somewhere in Germany there's another one that has the same game. I highly recommend checking it out. Gaming. Ooh. Right, so what are the challenges? Already talked about a couple of them. So GPU considerations at scale is a real thing. Like a 1B profile in an A16 card might sound really interesting for most use cases, and it is, but when talking about frame buffer, talking about the number of cores you get assigned to a workload, it will heavily differ. What's really cool here is, for instance, that CATIA will require a really high clock speed, but depending on the frame buffer and the GPU power that you need, you might end up with a 2 gig profile. Whereas the Autodesk suite or like AutoCAD will require something completely different. So when it comes to GPU considerations, running a proof of concept, running an assessment, knowing what applications you might look for is really, really important. Network considerations, and I'm not going to talk about that, I'm going to show that. Because one thing you need to know here is that we have shitty Wi-Fi. We have Spencer, one thing, he has a 5G router with him. The output of the display is 30 hertz, so that's going to be a challenge. Latency is relatively low, but for some reason the connection drops every now and then, so that's going to be an interesting constraint. And I did some testing just now. I got it to work, but I'll show you in the live demo how I got it to work and what methodology I use to troubleshoot stuff. Peripherals is a real thing. So when talking about gaming on VDI, which is a thing I love, a steering wheel is a weird peripheral. If you kind of translate that to what happens in the enterprise, a space mouse, which is commonly used within the development, like CAD developers use that, a 3D mouse, it is a weird peripheral. You need drivers, but also the right channel to use that peripheral to get the most out of the user experience. And the same with controllers. Like we have a use case of a company that uses digging machines remotely and uses controls remotely to operate the digging machines that could be on the other side of the globe. So being able to control those is really important. And latency issues when controlling them direct from, let's say, Germany in China or somewhere else is a challenge. So now being able to remote those controls through an optimized connection protocol and having a great output is essential. So we're going to talk about controls later on. And application vendor support is one thing that's commonly, I would say, underestimated, but having a GPU, having an application run on a GPU, and it shows really awesome performance or great user experience doesn't really mean that you are still allowed to use it. And CATIA is, again, a great example. There are specific GPUs certified for such a workload. What I wanted to show today, and I'm probably going to do that since Matt is not here anyways, I got the opportunity from Intel to work a lot with their Flex series GPUs, and the drivers are just GA, but there are a lot of stuff that isn't working yet. I'm going to show what the impact of the Intel GPU is. I'm going to show the AV1 encoder in one of the demos, but no application has been certified yet. So although you can buy it, you can run it, there's no support. So that's one of those challenges as well. Hence the bullet point. Now, what's new in Blast? A couple of things. First of all, AV1. So who has already heard about AV1? Cool, a couple of hands. So it's a new codec, and the really cool thing about AV1 is that it's open sourced. So H.264, H.265, also known as HEVC, are both licensed, which means that a company owns the rights for the connection protocol, and VMware actually has to pay money to be able to use the connection protocols. The codecs. AV1 is open sourced, and there are a lot of companies contributing to the success. So this is really cool. There's one downside, and that's it requires a GPU end-to-end, but I'll dive into that in a bit. So Flex series is fully supported right now, so that's pretty cool. The latest architecture of NVIDIA is supported in Blast Extreme, the Ada Lovelace architecture, and that also fully supports AV1. Now, and I'm not gonna show this in the demos, but when looking at encoding Blast Extreme using just CPUs, we now also support multi-CPU encoding. So it used to be just single-threaded, single CPU, and now it's multi-threaded as well, which, if you don't have GPUs, will end up in a positive impact to the connection protocol and the user experience. This I'm going to show in the demos, global quality policies. So independent of the type of codec that you select, you can now use a single policy to configure the compression and the quality of the codec. So H.264, H.265, and AV1 should all support a single configuration that you apply to a use case. And the last one is, I think, one I'm most enthusiastic about, the Blast Optimizer. So I wrote a book just on optimizing the user, almost on optimizing user experience, which is like there are. And I'll show that in one of the slides. There are approximately like 25 settings you can adjust to get the most out of a user experience. What the Blast Optimizer does is just there's a slider, hypothetically, and depending on the value of the slider, you end up with a really compressed, low-quality user experience or high-fidelity user experience. So it makes it really easy for most use cases to optimize the Blast Extreme settings. Now, what's AV1? Already kind of talked about it. It's an open source media codec, and companies like YouTube, Netflix, Intel, VMware, NVIDIA contribute to the success. So the more companies contribute, the better the connection protocol will be. And I think YouTube will completely move over to AV1 in the upcoming months. And I think this shows the real potential. So it promises a higher quality against lower bandwidth consumption, and this is one of the downsides. It requires end-to-end hardware, which means that I have an M1-based Mac here. It does not have the right hardware to decode it, whereas my Intel-based laptop does. So for the demos, I'm going to switch over to the laptops. If you don't have the AV1 option in your Horizon client, it does mean that the client doesn't support it. So it is a downside, but yeah, it requires a GPU simply because of the impact to your local system. If you don't have a GPU, the impact to the CPU would be thus high that it won't show the results that you have, or that you want. And this is it's quite similar to H.265 that has the same behavior, whereas H.264 can be offloaded to any type of device, because like even a Raspberry Pi has decoding offloaded in the hardware. Now, this is a demo. Oh, this was a demo video. Something is going wrong, I think. So this is supposed to be a demo video showing the differences between H.264, H.265, and AV1 next to each other. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so the far left, you can see AVC or H.264. HEVC is in the middle, and AV1 is at the right. And like if the video is constantly moving, you're not really at first hand see the differences. But if you take a better look at the different videos, you can actually see that the more right we go, the quality improves. And we're running a game on 1080p, so full HD with 5 MB of bandwidth. You can already see, if you look at the license plate, the difference between AVC, so H.264 at the left, and AV1 at the right. At the right, it's much sharper. Also, the details in the windows, the details in the shade is a lot better when it comes to AV1. So the quality just increases. If we now increase the bandwidth to 10 MB, you can actually see a bit more detail in a bit. So again, looking at the license plate at the far right, it is really smooth. There's a lot of detail, whereas at the left, with H.264, you can see there's much more compression added to the user experience. And the good thing is, or the thing is that when adding more bandwidth, the result will only be better. So it's a real good high fidelity codec that supports, I would say the best quality. And here you can still see 1080p, 15 MB a second, and it loses less textures. So HEVC and H.264 compress so much that you lose details. And with AV1, they keep the details where possible. Right. So there's a little bandwidth consumption. So you see 3 different types of video streams: 30 frames a second with full HD. The blue one is full HD with 60 frames a second, and the green one is 1440p with 60 frames a second. You see the bandwidth consumption rise, but the quality remains, and that's I think that's really cool about AV1. Now, 2 new things. So the blast, the global quality policies, and the blast optimizer. When looking at the global policies, as you can see, and I briefly touched upon these as well, is there's a shit ton of different sessions that you can configure to optimize the user experience. But what to select and how to select it, how to configure it, I think that's on average one of the challenges that we're seeing at customers in general. Like, I don't find this hard, but if you don't know what you're doing, you'll end up with not the best user experience that you want. And if you need, if you want to look up what these settings mean, you have a challenge as well, because the documentation on TechZone is not updated. So the last time it was updated was 2001. Back then, Blast Optimizer didn't exist. HEVC can be found there, but not with the configuration settings. AV1 is not there, so it's outdated. And these books have been, so my books have been, the last one is also dated from 2021. So Intel hardware was not, I tested with Intel hardware back then, but I wasn't allowed to talk about it or to write about it. So again, outdated. You can download the book, by the way, for free on the ITQ website. And we're going to release the second book probably before the end of the year as a free download as well. Now, coming back to the quality policies. So JPEG and H.264 are the main type of quality policies that you can configure. Using now the encoder global quality level, you just select a level from 1 to 5, and where 1 is the lowest and 5 is the highest quality, it automatically pushes through all of those values to any of the type of the encoders that you could use. So that's the only thing you have to do. And this is really cool, the Blast Optimizer. So what I would normally do, and I'm going to show that in the demo which follows after this slide, is like normally when I'm running into a session with a customer, I want to dive into the user experience, get the most out of the things that they do. First, I'm going to look at the frames per second. So if looking at YouTube videos is what they do on a daily scale, and that's the most important thing they do, running that on 60 frames per second doesn't really make sense, because from a user experience perspective, the difference between 30 and 60 is hardly noticeable. If they're doing just office work, for instance, on general, that's what they do. Their average frames per second would be probably somewhere between 10 and 15 when they are highly consuming the desktop. Like even if they just use Word, then 4 or 5 frames per second would probably also be sufficient. So I'm going to look at the FPS and adjust it where possible. Then I'm going to adjust the QP values to add more or less compression. I'm going to adjust the encoder. So if I have hardware, I'm going to use a hardware encoder. If I don't have that, I'm going to use a software encoder. I'm going to adjust high color accuracy. So if I have the possibility and enough bandwidth and enough juice to use it, I'll use it. And I'm going to adjust the bandwidth slope, especially in case of high fidelity use cases. Then I'm going to adjust the high bandwidth. And all in all, probably going to repeat that as well, just for every single use case. And then record it in a GPO or a smart policy. And this has been like a lot of my work in the last couple of years. What you can now do is just use the Blast Optimizer to select a single value, and it automatically adjusts all of these values for you. So this is not documented online. If you want to take a picture, please do that, because there's no documentation that can be found online on what the values are. I'm hoping for the team at VMware to update these values on the website anytime soon. But yeah, the settings in the Blast Optimizer can be configured from 1 to 9, and it'll automatically adjust the rest of the values like shown in the table. So the frames per second will be adjusted on a 5-step basis. Then the global quality encoder quality will be adjusted, and the bandwidth slope will be adjusted as well. Okay, enough with the talking. So I'm going to show an F1 sim, and I'm not hoping it'll look like that. It's going to be based on F122. I'm going to use the Blast Optimizer first. And what's really cool about these settings is they exist in the user space of the registry. So you can just adjust them. They'll be applied in real time. So end users, hypothetically, if they have access to the registry, they can also adjust the user experience. And this is really cool. Right. So this is going to be a thing. Who has ever changed the encoder in the Horizon client, or in Horizon in general? Who knows how to switch encoders from like Blast to HEVC or AV1? It is extremely simple. If you don't adjust the default values in Horizon, in the GPOs, then the only thing the end user has to do is go to the Blast Extreme settings and adjust the codec here. Oh. You are not seeing the same thing here. bear with me. Let's see, I think I should change the output to something different. Refresh rate. Will it only work with 30 frames a second? Right, that sucks because the laptop only supports 48 or 60. Oh, there we go, yeah, 30 hertz. Oh, crap, wrong button. Okay, cool. Whew. First bit of the live demo done. Okay, so this was what I was referring to. So there's 4 different codecs that you can select here. Enabling blast codec will automatically turn on if it doesn't detect any hardware. H.264 is enabled in every client by default because what I mentioned, most clients have that baked in. So H.264 decoding is part of nearly every device. And HEVC and AV1 require specific hardware. So if enabled for HEVC, I can also select HDR or high definition color coding. And if you have the hardware, you can also select AV1. Now what happens if I select all of them? The one with the best quality will automatically be selected depending on the hardware that you have in the data center as well. So the GPU I have in one of my data centers does not support AV1, so I won't be able to select it. There's one downside currently on AV1, and that's that it doesn't support all of the compression technology that's baked into HEVC and H.264, but I'm still going to show it, which means that bandwidth control currently is not in the current version of the driver, but will be added later on. So, I'm going to sign into the environment first with the Intel GPU, and what you'll probably see is that the user experience is not the best. And again, that's due to the fact that it doesn't apply the bandwidth policy yet. You can see here, and does anyone know which application that is at the top right? Okay, that's the Horizon Performance Tracker. It's a feature that you can enable during the installation of the agent, and you can run it on top. And it, from an end user perspective, just shows you basic information about the encoder that you selected. And you can see here AV1 is selected, the bandwidth that you have, the frames per second that it has, and the round trip latency, round trip time. So it does show some basic information. As you can see, the user experience is not that good. Again, mostly due to, well, stuff like this. AV1 currently tries to get all bandwidth it has, and that's one of the biggest challenges. Now, what I'm gonna do instead is connect to a different environment that actually has an NVIDIA GPU and HEVC configured, which will allow me to adjust the user experience a bit. Oh, crap. Thank you. That's the one. I owe you, Matt. Oh. Fingers crossed. If only we could have multiple connection servers connected at the same time. That would save time in demos. Right. So, you can't. Okay. Well, one with the web client and one with the... Oh, really? Awesome. So what I tried, and who joined our session in Barcelona? Well, you did. Well, so two things went wrong during that session. One, I brought an Xbox controller which I couldn't get redirected, and it failed this morning as well. Second one is I almost shut down a lamp out of the ceiling using a t-shirt gun. Yeah, was kind of the thing. So if there's on the regulations of VMware Explorer next year, it's going to be like you're not allowed to bring t-shirts gun in. Sorry, that was my fault. Okay, gonna do two things. First of all, I'm gonna open up the WebGL Aquarium application. Who ever tests user experience using a YouTube video? Stop doing that. Because what a YouTube video does is also run decoding on the same GPU. So if you want to have like a clear user experience, either download the video or use a different type of application, like the WebGL application, the WebGL Aquarium. So first thing we're going to do is adjust the user experience a little bit. You can see a little bit of the same issues we just had before. If I now adjust the blast optimizer from 5, which is the default, to, for instance, 2, what you see is that the frames per second are automatically scaled down to 10, and the bandwidth consumption is still relatively big, but it automatically adjusts the user experience already. It is choppy. It doesn't look good. But adjusting this, for instance, to a value of 4, you see immediately that it changes a little bit, but the bandwidth consumption increases as well. So if you have enough bandwidth at your disposal, or if the environment that you're in will allow it, or the use cases will allow it, this is still a great way to adjust it. And I'm using the registry right now. I'm thinking that I'm hoping that Spencer in the live demo will show RD Analyzer, right? Yeah. Adjusting it to 9 will scale up the frames per second to 60 frames per second, but will also increase the bandwidth consumption a lot. It does look good right now, but it is really choppy when it comes to the bandwidth that we have. Now, what I'll do next is I'm gonna remove the value, which means that the blast optimizer is not used, and close down the window. Does the sound work if I plug in the jack? Enable sound. Yes. EA Sports to the game. So no settings are set. So everything right now is set to the default values. And I'm already seeing it's a little bit flaky. Any F1 fans here? Cool. Any preferred team? McLaren. Preferred circuit? Belgium? Silverstone. Great Britain. There we go. So you already see that the rendering didn't go like in a flow. It wasn't smooth. That's not because of the GPU, but it's because of the bandwidth. So as soon as more frames needed to be rendered, more changes to a single frame are happening, you can see the bandwidth like spike. And we don't have that bandwidth. So what I'll do first, I'm gonna, we started kind of a little bit later. Is it okay if we end a tiny bit later as well? Sorry? All right. Well, this is not good. Okay, so I'm going to show one more thing, and that's just simple. So the frames per second are now configured by default to 60. What I'm going to adjust is the min and max QP value. So these are the compression values that are set within the different connection protocols, or within the different codecs. And the higher the higher the min QP value is, varying between 10 and 51, the higher the compression will be applied to the connection protocol. So what that means is if we restart the lab, you can already see that the bandwidth is dropped down a little bit, but also it's completely smooth right now. So it's not my favorite circuit, but I'm actually able to drive with a decent user experience. Frame rate is consistent. Right, well, I suck with the keyboard. Right, Spence, you want to take it over? If you're talking to the lecture. You have to adjust the hertz to 30 here. No, that one, display. Arrow to the right, display settings. I feel like IT guy again. Advanced. Yes, and then yes. And then set it to 30. Select this one. That should work.
Woohoo! Apart from it's a different screen, so I want a mirror. There we go. No, I didn't want that. I wanted mirror. No. Nothing like last minute, right? What can you see? You can't. Right. I can't get out of it. Unplug, go back in. Typical.
Well, it's the charm of live demos, I guess.
I pressed the wrong button like you did. Well, you did revert, I didn't do revert, I did something else, and I wanted to do extend, and now I can't get my mouse back. I don't want extend, I want mirror. Yes. Right, really quickly, before you all go then. So, we probably aren't going to show you the slides. Is that going to work?
So what Spencer is going to show,
what I will do when I get there,
when he gets there, is that like Horizon is obviously supported for virtual desktops, but you can use the same Blast Extreme protocol to connect to a physical desktop. So you are able to install the Horizon agent on a physical device. And what's really cool is that the physical device, if it has a GPU, is capable of offloading the encoding of those frames as well. So you can get a really awesome user experience to a physical device as well.
So basically I'm quite sad, and I'm also, I would say, quite a tight ass. Is that allowed? Can I say that?
Yeah.
So I like to buy old HP workstations. So I've got some HP Z420s, I've got a G4, and I've got some graphics cards I put in them. And I think, what else are you going to do with that other than put a graphics card in there and remote control to it? And I'm also, when I say quite sad, I'll show you just exactly how sad that is. So I go to here. So this is a HP Z20 that I've got there. So hopefully that will come in. And to try and keep it simple, I've made it red and gold. I don't know why red and gold. It seems to be my Christmas tree theme for this year, so my children tell me. Right, down the bottom here though, so you'll notice something. It says, you've played 34,005 hours. I like World of Warships, by the way. 5 minutes, there we go. Right, problem though. So this is a physical machine. You can see in the bottom left corner, I say bottom right corner to you, if I move this out of the way, so I like a bit of BG info. And as Johan was saying, all of what he just showed you registry-wise is available in a little tool called RD Analyzer. Anybody know RD Analyzer? It is reasonably expensive, but once you get it down, you can use it on multiple machines. Effectively, everything that he's just gone through, you can do. You can slide and you can do it real time. So, you know, enabling the blast codec, you can see there I've got blast optimizer for 9. Interestingly, I don't know why, but on this you can only change it to 5. And it defaults and gets rid of everything above 5.
It's going to be adjusted in the next version.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's my graphics card. Again, I can't bear to get rid of old kit. Does that make me quite green? I don't know.
No, I think this is really an awesome example of, like, one of the misconceptions is if you want to play around with a virtual desktop or with Horizon or with Blast Extreme, you need really expensive data center grade GPUs from NVIDIA. Or nowadays from Intel.
Some of those as well, to be fair. But
yeah, but
on my virtual kit.
No, but yeah. What Spencer shows is that he has a GeForce GTX 1060, but like every GPU from NVIDIA that supports HEVC or H.264, if you will, can handle decoding or encoding of the Blast Extreme. So if you would hypothetically run Workstation or something else, and you could pass through the GPU to virtual machine, you can play around with this as well. You don't need a really expensive data center GPU to play around with Blast Extreme.
And to be fair, I did it just so I could work out all the different settings. Now, what I've just done in the background here, and I'm hoping this will do this, which is foul. It's going to error. So I don't know if anybody's played around with this. Who has actually done remote control to a physical desktop? Yes. Isn't it good when you actually get the error you want? Because it comes up. So World of Warships, if anybody ever wants to come and, you know, give me a game at some point, more than happy to take you on. It errors because it needs OpenGL. And interestingly, on a physical machine, when you first join it, it doesn't pick it up. So if I'm very good here, I might have got DXDiag running, yes. And DXDiag, you can see here, it's got certain things on there available and certain things that aren't, right? So actually, when it picks up the virtual or the indirect display driver. It doesn't pick up, from OpenGL perspective, the actual physical machine. So I spent a while trying to fix this, and I'm happy to say that I've got an answer. Because I tried to do this at I almost said VMworld, Explore. God, I am living in the past by Broadcom. So,
Joe just called it VMworld as well, so.
So what I decided to do is, how am I going to get around this? Now, I kept on playing around with it, so this is my G4 example now. And what I worked out is if you already got the machine running and you've got the game running, then you remote control to it, it works like a dream. So I was like, okay, so how am I going to do this though? Because I can't connect to it unless I'm logged on. But if I'm logged on, then I can't run it because it needs a session to run. So what I did is create a GPO with an auto admin login. Annoyingly, it's my free text password, so I'm not going to show you what that is. Then put in the game ID because I run Steam. I don't know if anybody else runs Steam. Pretty much, I think most people do. You put in the game ID in there and put it in shell startup. And then what I then do is shut down, restart that, which is obviously going to disappear. But when I come back in, it would have automatically started the game, which is brilliant because that's all I ever do apparently when I travel.
So
play World of Warships.
But what was the primary use case for you to virtualize the game?
Me to play World of Warships when I
go
on a Mac. Because Macs, by the way, they used to be able to play World of Warships on a Mac natively. Then they got rid of it. Then I just thought it was super cool to do it on VDI, so I played around with it. Then they got rid of it, so I just thought I'd do it on physical anyway. But I came up against this problem. So in a second then, and we'll leave it at that in a second because I know everybody wants to go off and get their tea, but yeah, effectively it will just come along and it should reboot and then log back into it. If I can get my screen back. cursor back? There we go. Got to leave your finger on. So I'll go back into that in a minute, and what you should see is it running. And that'll just be the last piece we can do it. And now luckily it's quite a high-spec machine, NVMe, it's got about 128 gig RAM. That one's got an AMD 67050 XT card in there, so it should be pretty good. I think it takes roughly about 45 seconds.
So interesting to hear, right?
Stop.
Stop.
Yeah. Right, anyway, I'll give it a go now, see if it's rebooted. But all being well...
You mentioned AMD, right?
Say that again, sorry.
AMD, you mentioned
it's
AMD
an
GPU?
AMD 670, 650. Maybe I didn't get it quite in time, so it's going to error. But yeah, what it would have done is reboot that and go in. I think I just caught it too quickly. I should have waited 20 seconds and it would have gone on, then it would have done. But anyway, yeah. If anybody wants to, obviously my Stream Deck comes up as well. If anybody wants more information on that, around how that works, but basically I still like virtual. I still use that all the time. I like physical. I think I get better frame rates, but because you're now sort of at the mercy of what's going on with the BLAST protocol, actually the bigger the card is doesn't really make that much sense. But I'm still a virtual man, even though I've got to get all of that done, like I said. But yeah. Anyway, we got to stop, sorry.
Yeah, now really stop, otherwise we probably won't leave the
Well, hang around for a little bit if
thing
anyone
alive.
wants to grab us.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
By the way, if you want to know more about Horizon, so I've got a second session in at around I think 14-ish, 2-ish.